My wife, Sarah, was the kind of woman who could capture attention wherever she went. She was smart, ambitious, and always knew what she wanted. We had been married for several years, and I thought I knew her better than anyone. But looking back, I can see how wrong I was. We had a steady routine. Sarah worked at an office downtown, while I worked from home as a software developer. My job kept me around the house, while she focused on her career. I preferred the quiet of home, while she thrived in her busy office environment. Despite our differences, I always thought we balanced each other well. I've always been the kind of person who values loyalty and stability. To me, marriage was built on trust and shared goals. I didn't like surprises or drama. Sarah, on the other hand, was more outgoing, always connecting with new people. I thought her social nature complemented my reserved personality. I never imagined she could betray me. Our struggles started years ago when we learned that I was infertile. It was a tough blow for me, but Sarah took it in stride, suggesting we could adopt one day. She reassured me that it didn't matter how our family came together, and I believed her. We stopped trying to conceive naturally, and over time, it became something we both accepted. What I didn't realize was that this issue would come back to haunt us and play a huge role in what was about to unfold. Things started changing when Sarah began coming home late from work. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal, just an hour here or there. She said she was working on a huge project, something she called the opportunity of her career, and I believed her. She'd always been driven when it came to work, so it made sense that she was putting in extra hours. But as time went on, her late nights became more frequent. I asked her about it, and she gave the same excited response about the project. I wanted to believe her, but something didn't feel right. Then one night, she came home much later than usual, and she was drunk. Sarah never drank like that. She could barely make it through the door, and I had to help her to bed. As I sat in the living room that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Her behavior was out of character, and for the first time, I let myself wonder if there was more to her late nights than she was letting on. It wasn't long after that when things took a turn for the worse. One Saturday, I decided to take care of some errands around the city. One of the tasks on my list was to clean out the car, something I'd been putting off for weeks. As I went through the usual mess, old receipts, loose change, random bits of paper, I found something that made my stomach drop. Tucked deep in the glove compartment was a pack of condoms. Not just any pack, but an open one, with a few missing. We hadn't used condoms in years, not since we found out about my infertility. There was no reason for them to be there. My hands trembled as I pulled out the pack, the realization of what it meant hitting me hard. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, I found something else, a used condom, hidden deep beneath the papers. My mind raced. It all lined up with that night Sarah came home drunk. The late nights. The project she couldn't stop talking about. The whole story started to unravel in front of me. I felt a cold rage bubbling inside me. Not the kind of explosive anger that burns out quickly, but the kind that simmers, the kind that doesn't go away. In that moment, I knew I had been betrayed. Sarah was cheating on me. I had been blind to it all this time, but now, the proof was staring me in the face. But instead of confronting her immediately, a different idea started forming in my mind. If this was how she wanted to play, I wasn't just going to stand by and take it. No, I was going to make sure she faced the consequences. I grabbed the pack of condoms and carefully took a needle, puncturing each one. If she was going to continue her little affair, I'd make sure things didn't go as planned. If she got herself into trouble, it would be her own fault. I placed the condoms back exactly where I found them, making sure nothing looked out of place. Then, I waited. The next few days passed without much incident. Sarah kept coming home late, sticking to her story about the big project at work. But I was biding my time. I didn't want to act too soon. I needed the perfect moment, one that would hit her the hardest. That moment came when she mentioned she had an important presentation coming up. According to her, it was the biggest moment of her career. She had been talking about it for weeks, preparing for it meticulously. I knew this was my chance. The night before her big presentation, Sarah stayed late at work, just as she had been. I woke up early the next morning, long before she did, and made my moves. The first thing I did was call the bank. I reported her card as compromised, claiming there were suspicious charges, and they blocked it temporarily. Then, I went outside to her car and let the air out of both front tires, making sure they were completely flat. If she was going to make it to her presentation, it wasn't going to be easy. When she finally woke up, the morning unfolded exactly as I had planned. Sarah was instantly in a panic, rushing around the house to get ready. I could see the stress in her face, the urgency in her movements. She fumbled with her purse, only to realize her card wasn't working. I watched her try to call the bank, but it was obvious she wasn't getting anywhere. She was frantic, pacing around the house, trying to figure out how to get to work. When she ran outside and saw her car, her frustration only grew. I watched from the window as she cursed under her breath, trying to call a cab. Eventually, one showed up, and she rushed out the door, clearly rattled. I couldn't help but smile as I watched her leave. She was running late, and I knew just how much this presentation meant to her. The fact that she was scrambling, completely unprepared for the obstacles I had set, felt like a small victory. From what I gathered later, her presentation didn't go well at all. She arrived late, flustered, and completely off her game. Her colleagues had been waiting for her, along with the clients she was supposed to impress. But Sarah, already frazzled from the morning's events, couldn't pull it together. Her words were jumbled, her points didn't land, and the whole thing fell apart. She left the meeting humiliated, exactly as I had planned. At home, things were tense. Sarah tried to hide her disappointment, but I could see it all over her face. She avoided eye contact, her usual confidence gone. I didn't bring up the presentation, acting like nothing had changed, all while enjoying the quiet satisfaction of knowing my plan had worked. A few weeks passed, and I started noticing changes in her behavior. She wasn't going out as much, and her late nights became less frequent. Something was clearly weighing on her. Then I noticed her checking her phone more often, specifically an app she used to track her periods. One day, I glanced at the screen and saw that she had marked a delay. That's when it all started to make sense. It wasn't long after that when she started showing the more obvious signs. One morning, she rushed to the bathroom, and I heard her getting sick. When she came out, she looked pale, trying to brush it off by saying it was probably something she ate. But I knew better. The panic in her eyes gave her away. This wasn't food poisoning. It was exactly what I had anticipated. That night, I decided it was time to confront her. We were sitting on the couch, and she was glued to her phone, probably checking that app again. I turned to her, my voice calm and steady, and asked, "How does it feel, Sarah, to be carrying a child that isn't ours?" Her face went white. She tried to deny it, stumbling over her words, but the guilt was written all over her face. She pleaded, saying it wasn't what I thought, that it was a mistake. But I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. I cut her off. "Stop lying to me," I said. "I know what's going on. I've known for a while. You've made a fool out of me." She tried to grab my arm, begging me to let her explain, but I was done. I stood up, walked into the bedroom, and started throwing her things into a suitcase. She followed me, tears in her eyes, pleading with me to stop. But I wasn't having it. "You don't get to come back from this," I told her, my voice cold and unyielding. "You made your choice. Now you'll have to live with it." She broke down, sobbing, telling me she was pregnant and asking how I could throw her out when she needed me the most. But I wasn't swayed. Her pregnancy didn't change anything. In fact, it only confirmed what I had suspected all along. "You think your pregnancy gets you a free pass?" I asked. "You think I'm going to forget what you did? You betrayed me, Sarah. You destroyed everything." I threw the last of her things into the suitcase and shoved it toward the door. She was still crying, still begging for another chance, but I was done. There was no going back. She had made her bed, and now she would have to lie in it. The divorce proceedings that followed were quick. We didn't have much to divide, and I made it clear that I wanted no part in the child's life. Sarah tried to argue for shared custody, but I wouldn't hear of it. I wasn't going to be tied to the child of her affair. After the divorce, I heard through mutual friends that Sarah had decided to terminate the pregnancy. It wasn't an easy decision for her, but I think the shame of it all, the affair, the pregnancy, the divorce, was too much for her to bear. Her family, deeply religious, disowned her when they found out. She lost her support system, her job, and eventually, her sense of stability. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into work, reconnecting with friends I'd neglected over the years, and slowly rediscovered who I was outside of the marriage. It wasn't easy, but over time, I realized that I was better off without her. The experience taught me a lot about trust, loyalty, and self-respect. I had ignored the signs for too long, blinded by my belief that Sarah would never betray me. But once that trust was broken, there was no putting it back together. I learned that love isn't enough to keep a relationship intact if the respect and loyalty aren't mutual. Looking back, I don't regret what happened. It was painful, sure, but it also forced me to grow, to prioritize my own happiness and well-being. I came out of it stronger, wiser, and more determined to never compromise my values again. And for that, I'm grateful. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.